Hello and welcome. This video is going to show you how the tarot presents the core concept in the majority of magical and spiritual practices called polarity. Polarity is more than just difference. It represents the kind of difference that creates a charge of energy between two things. And most of us are familiar with the idea of polarity in magnetism or in the concept of the poles of the earth. It's two ends of things, but in the magnetic sense, it represents energy moving in a particular direction. And that's a lot of what polarity represents magically, emotionally, and in the way that we are capable of manipulating it. A difference that is just a comparison is just talking about the qualities of two things. A difference that has polarity puts two things in relation and describes the energy that is moving between them, and what that energy might imply for a person who wants to utilize it in some way, participate in it, or manipulate that flow. And a lot of the core concepts that you're going to find in magical and transformational practices rely on some understanding, or at least presence, of this concept of polarity. Now, polarity exists in the natural world in a lot of fairly obvious ways that tie back, I think in the clearest illustrations, to the elements that we've already talked about as present in the tarot deck. We talk about earth and air, the charge that the two hold for one another, that in order for things to grow out of the earth, the wind's got to pick things up and carry them away. Wherever they land, the drama of that transit, bringing a seed from one spot to another, is going to create the potential for a new energy that also produces a common relationship from one place to another as a plant takes root from the place that it's been growing to this new spot. And it also, for those who can experience those plants growing in different places, is going to create a kind of polarity between that experience. As one notices how the growth in this first area is different from the growth in the second area. And so there is a comparison going on there, but there's also this opportunity for transformation, greater understanding, and because of this action that the wind has taken on the material of the earth, we then have this opportunity to learn more about both the earth and the wind as we study the nature of that transit. These natural phenomena are things that our ancestors have been contemplating since our understanding of what humanity is. People notice differences with importance, differences with energy, and they talk about these things, they learn how to utilize them. It forms their understanding of the world. Now, for us in the modern age, we are experiencing polarities all the time. A simple emotional example of polarity that we are bombarded with is advertising. Talented advertisers can create a phrase that immediately builds a polarity in your mind. There's this thing that if you don't have it, this is going to happen to you. And so suddenly your own position is placed in a polarity with a lack that it is implied that you've got, and the advertisement is describing the energy that this lack is putting into your life. That there is now a negative energy, a drawing away, a loss that you are experiencing because you don't have this thing. So really, the advertisement is not so much about the thing that the advertiser is trying to sell. It is about building this instant emotional polarity within your mind, within your heart, in some ways pummeling your emotional and mental resistance against the idea of buying this, so that once you are ready to buy something like it, you think of this thing that was advertised to you, or you're a little bit more sympathetic to the idea of purchasing it because you've experienced this emotional polarity over and over and over again as you have witnessed these advertisements. So we now live in a world that is creating constant polarity tensions within each individual. So one benefit of understanding polarity is learning how to consciously ignore and sever the tension that unwanted messages that create polarity could potentially have on you. Being able to recognize the emotional impact of those messages, the way that they are constructed, how they create this pole of emotional tension, and being able to just say, there is no tension. So that when you do have to make decisions, you are no longer being guided by these emotional dents that this constant bombardment creates on your sense of self, your sense of need, but instead being able to go into decision making with more of a sense of the qualities of the thing that you need, putting the time into understanding how you're going to get it, what exactly you want, the important parts of it, whether it's the cost or some certain thing that you need it to do compared to other things of its kind, so that you can make a better decision about what you're going to interact with and why you want it, instead of being drawn by these polarity tethers that have already affected you in some way. That's just a mundane example. But we also find polarity in much more exciting and personal things, like the way that we create beneficial spiritual relationships. So that as I'm looking for spiritual allies, friends who can help me, I am not looking for people who are just like me. In fact, a lot of my own practice involves diving into my uniqueness and trying to find things there that I can offer to others that I've never seen before in anybody else. So that I've got something that represents the truly special parts of myself that I can then share with others in the hope that they will share something from their experience, their world, that I could not possibly produce or imagine. And now we have established a kind of polarity between their skills, their experience, the world that they are coming from and have created in their own heart, and my own. And we have this incredible chance to learn from the energy that our contact brings to our lives, the sense of excitement that we get through the curiosity and interests that we share, and our ability to gain from one another in this transfer of energy from the uniqueness that we have sought within ourselves and established language, metaphors for, so that we're capable of sharing it. And as far as relationships go, that understanding of polarity will very consistently create something healthy for those who are looking to continue to explore and continue to grow. Now, not everybody is in the best place to do that all the time. We need consent for polarity. Because unlike those advertisers, if we are looking to work magically with each other, to share energy with one another, there needs to be some process of agreeing that this is what you want, this is what I want. It makes the energy flow in a much freer way. And it also means that you're accepting these things with an open heart, with a desire to understand and guide your own change, and you're offering that to the other person rather than feeling like either one of you is being dragged through territory that you don't really want to be in. In everything related to magic, consent is very important, because not only does it mean that the person that you're acting on is accepting what you have to offer, but it also means that you are not transforming yourself into somebody who is fortified to enact through power. Because when this happens, so for instance, the very common example of a man making demands on a woman that he's in a relationship with, that he feels like he needs to drag her through things, make her do things, and make that the foundation of the relationship. Now, what this means is that not only is the woman being forced in a position that she might not choose, that may transform her into somebody that she doesn't really want to be, that doesn't match her identity, but also it means that the man's no longer free to explore himself. Instead, he has to maintain this posture, this rigidity of being a thing that can pull her around, whatever that's going to take. And so he loses the option to soften himself. He loses the option to explore his own emotions and what his actions are doing to him on an emotional level and on a mental level. But instead, he forces himself into a position where he's always got to be able to put that pressure on and constantly drag and continually control that woman. It is an investment of energy that ultimately calcifies a person and makes it very difficult for them to transform, to adjust, to become more of what they truly are. Instead, they are pushing themselves into the mold of a role that will almost certainly not work for them in the long term. So to get back to tarot, how does tarot help us understand polarity? Well, tarot cards each represent a particular position, and at least as far as the suited pip cards go, a concept within the framework of an element. So you have the opportunity to think about the polarity from a position in one element with a position in another element. But you've also got this chance to think about the polarity of the different positions within the element itself. And then if you're doing readings for a person, you can look at those polarities and bring them from the abstract to the concrete way that that is manifesting in that person's life, what it actually means for them, and along that line of polarity, what they can do about that energy in motion. They may need to cut the tension, they may need to help the energy move along. In many readings, you will have contradictory polarities, indicating a choice for a person. You can either go along with this energy or that energy. Sometimes you've got a clear sense of what a person wants as it's presented in the reading, and then many energies that are contradicting it, making it more of a challenge. This helps you to identify what obstacles that person's going to have to overcome in order to get what they want. And then they've got a clear opportunity to decide, is my goal really worth it? Do I want to do all these other things in order to get this thing that I say that I want? Or is there another way that will make more sense for me? So let's take a look at some examples in cards themselves. So here we have the Ace of Coins and the Page of Cups. The Page of Cups is walking. You can see his feet are in motion, and he is gazing into this cup that he is holding up. The cup is sort of being swooped over by his sash, and he's holding the top of a cup, or maybe his hat, in his hand. In a lot of ways, the energy of the page is discombobulated. It's going in a lot of different directions. He's trying to look into something that he's sloshing around by moving at the same time. He's not paying attention to where he's going. And there are a lot of questions about whether he's going to trip, whether he can really see into this cup at all, whether he should be looking into this cup. His personality represents a lot of different directions that his present energy might go in that seems to have been motivated by curiosity, a desire to know something, but maybe something that has more depth than he's really ready for in this moment. He or she, the pages I find can be pretty gender neutral. They just represent that sense of wanting to play around, wanting to know, and not worrying too much about the consequences of their actions in this course of just seeing what happens. Whereas the Ace of Coins is very stable. You have 4 plants growing out of it into each corner that are curling into themselves. So there's a sense of recursion, of self-support, of foundation. The coin seems to be lying flat on the ground. It really couldn't be more stable, especially with this idea that it is the root for these plants. The Ace of Coins indicates a foundation that will bring new opportunities, where new growth is possible, where there is a fertility that has not been explored or unlocked yet, that has suddenly entered into our lives, and it represents the possibility for a lot of work, planning, foresight into making this into something that can truly be used and appreciated, but it's still latent. And it'll spark the imagination in a lot of directions where it could go, but if it's really going to become anything, then there's going to be a lot of work involved. So we can be pretty sure that the page here is not thinking a whole lot about work or purpose or developing something into something else. His aimlessness makes it difficult for him to even think about the ground beneath him. He's a little bit absent-minded in this sense. He is emotionally exploring, or she is thinking about all the feelings that may relate to whatever's going on with the cup, and musing about them as he or she strolls along, maybe in the right direction, maybe distracted away from it, because their sight isn't where they're going. Whereas in the Ace of Coins moment, you're going to need a plan if you want to do anything with this resource. Also, there is a sense in the Ace of Coins that something may have been offered to you, and you don't really know where it came from. It seems like a good foundation, seems like a great opportunity, but you may not know where the roots of it are, and the whole history of this thing. It just grabs you because it seems like a powerful potential foundation, a strong material opportunity. So especially if I'm looking at these two cards together, is the thing being offered by the ace being offered through a veil of emotional confusion? Is it being presented in a way that immediately seems attractive and gets you involved with it on this emotional level, on this level of your imagination, yet you're moving in a direction that is contrary to what you actually need and what's ultimately going to be for you in the long term? Are you being bamboozled? Also, there's this question of whether emotional exploration is taking you away from physical prosperity. This may come up in a spread where you've got a person who could make a lot of different emotional commitments potentially, but by only exploring that part of their life, they may not be able to get the material things that they also want, or that could be in front of them, or that may have been a part of their past, and they've got to decide, are you going to take this emotional journey, or are you going to settle on the foundation that has always made sense to you, make it your own, and develop it with your own sense of flair and responsibility? So I see a lot of polarity tension between these two cards, even though they come from suits that are on the passive side of the tarot elements. So they do have things in common there. And the page is the first card in the series of the courts. The Ace of Coins is the first card in the numerical series of the pips and coins. So it's not as if there's nothing in common between them, but they still have a powerful sense of polarity. And this is often an aspect of how polarity works. You've got to have a common thread between two things for them to have any polarity. If they are completely alien from each other and don't really have anything to do with each other, then there's really no opportunity for energy transfer. They've got to have something to do with one another in order for that connection to be created so that the energy can be used. It's not to say that you can't build polarity between two alien things, but it takes some effort. You've got to present them in a way that allows for that energy to flow, get them into a context with each other so that they have meaning in relation to each other. And we find that it's easiest to find polarity, actually, between things that have something in common along with aspects of strong difference. So if you have an ambitious man who grew up in a particular culture, an ambitious woman who grew up in the same culture, they're probably going to have a different sense of the goals of their ambitions, as well as how to achieve those ambitions. But that sense of ambition and that cultural commonality, the fact that they share a language, a context, a sphere of influence that they want to have something to do with, that is going to create polarity between them in any way that they interact, and they'll have a chance both to challenge each other if they end up being in competition in some way, and they will learn a lot from each other due to those challenges, or partnering with one another and utilizing their different senses of expertise, goal setting, how to proceed, discussing that, dividing up tasks, and then being impressed with how each one of them is growing and achieving and doing more and more, and how they can then benefit from the work of the other. These are just a few illustrations of how polarity appears in our lives and the ways that we can utilize that charge just in a mundane day-to-day sense. As we go through this series, I will offer more illustrations of how to take advantage of these principles in a magical sense. But really, if this is somewhat new to you, or you haven't just thought about polarity by itself, as opposed to saying, oh, well, you know, I do this part of my practice, I do these rituals, me and my coven do this particular series of actions, and I can see the polarity in it, I see where that principle is. Take that principle into the rest of your life. Think about it in other personal relationships that you have, as well as ways that you think about the challenges in front of you, how you're going to take on your obstacles, how you deal with your problems, Where are the polarities? What do they mean for you? How is the potential motion of energy affecting you as you think about what you're going to do and how to do it and what makes sense? The more that you clarify this subject in your mind, the more that you will have a sense of sureness in your commitment of energy. You will be more comfortable in periods of conflict and not being sure about what's going to happen, because you'll understand that a lot of what you're feeling that often makes people uncomfortable is a buildup of polarity, and it puts you in a position of strength as you build that polarity, because you can do something with that energy motion once you see it in a consistent way and understand how those situations map into your magical practice and how you can use your practice to shift those polarities, do something with that energy, and how you're being presented with opportunities to utilize polarity both for yourself and for your loved ones. Thank you very much for listening, and please add any questions to the comments. I'm curious to know what I can flesh out in this topic to make it more helpful to you. If you are in need of personal spiritual guidance, if you are looking for readings, you can both contact me through my website, newelltarot.com, and also please check out my reading subscription options on the Newell Tarot Patreon. Thanks again, and have a fabulous day. Take care.